In a bombshell indictment, U.S. prosecutors allege a media company linked to conservative influencers who regularly reach millions, including Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, and Dave Rubin, was secretly funded by Russian state media employees whose goal was to amplify U.S. domestic division and spread Russian propaganda. Take a listen to Attorney General Merrick Garland breaking down the indictment.
We allege that as part of that effort, RT and its employees, including the defendants, implemented a nearly $10 million scheme to fund and direct a Tennessee-based company to publish and disseminate content deemed favorable to the Russian government. To implement this scheme, the defendants directed the company to contract with U.S.-based social media influencers to share this content on their platforms. The subject matter and content of many of the videos published by the company were often consistent with Russia's interest in amplifying U.S. domestic divisions in order to weaken U.S. opposition to core Russian interests, particularly its ongoing war in Ukraine. The company never disclosed to the influencers or to their millions of followers its ties to RT and the Russian government.
Russia, Russia, Russia. Now, to be clear, the U.S. Justice Department does not allege any wrongdoing on the part of the influencers themselves. Instead, it's accusing these two employees of Russia Today of funneling $10 million to a Tennessee-based media company that created Russia-friendly content, what they describe as Russia-friendly content. The indictment did not name the company that was widely believed to be called Tenet Media. Podcaster Tim Pool released a statement on X, writing in part, quote, "Should these allegations prove true, I, as well as the other personalities and commentators, were deceived and were victims. I cannot speak for anyone else at the company as to what they do or to what they are instructed. The Culture War podcast was licensed by Tenet Media. It existed well before any license agreement with Tenet, and it will continue to exist after any such agreement expires. The only change with the agreement was that the location of the live broadcast moved to Tenet's YouTube channel. I and TCW never produced any content for Tenet Media." He also added, "Putin is a scumbag, Russia sucks." Meanwhile, Benny Johnson said on X, quote, "A year ago, a media startup pitched my company to provide content as an independent contractor. Our lawyer negotiated a standard arm's-length deal, which was later terminated. We are disturbed by the allegations in today's indictment, which make clear that myself and other influencers were victims in this alleged scheme. My lawyers will handle anyone who states or suggests otherwise." Dave Rubin said, quote, "These allegations clearly show that I and other commentators were the victims of this scheme. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing, about any of this fraudulent activity, period." Garland also announced sanctions for what he says are Russian government-sponsored attempts to manipulate U.S. public opinion ahead of the November election. Let's watch.
In a separate enforcement action, the Justice Department is seizing 32 internet domains that the Russian government and the Russian-sponsored actors have used to engage in a covert campaign to interfere and influence the outcome of our country's elections. As alleged in our court filings, President Vladimir Putin's inner circle, including Sergei Kirilnikov, directed Russian public relations companies to promote disinformation and state-sponsored narratives as part of a program to influence the 2024 U.S. presidential election. An internal planning document created by the Kremlin states that as a goal of the campaign is securing Russia's preferred outcome in the election.
Garland added that Russians were creating websites filled with Russian propaganda created by the Kremlin. The sites were designed to trick Americans into thinking the news was coming from a major outlet like the Washington Post or Fox News. Per Kremlin documents, they were, quote, bogus stories disguised as newsworthy events. They also created fake social media profiles. Now, beyond seizing the 32 internet domains, the Biden administration also sanctioned 10 individuals and entities as part of the alleged propaganda effort. Okay, lots to get into here. So this was some big news on social media yesterday that these commentators, Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, had been making YouTube videos, and it turns out that the company that was paying for them misrepresented to them their origins. If you read the indictment, they actually, they asked, well, wait, who wants to do this? Who are we doing business with? And the conspirators made up a fake person who's like a Swiss banker, a French, some European banker, businessman.
European mysterious.
And they wanted to know, and so they made a fake business resume for this guy. And it actually tipped off one of the, I can't tell from the indictment which right-wing person it was, but because it said in like the business, like this is like a LinkedIn profile type thing, it said wants to spread social justice. And they were like, wait a minute, why do you want to, why are you investing in right-wing commentary if you want to spread social justice? But anyway, it went through. That business person did not exist. Like they were routinely Googling in their emails to the Tim Pool and others, like they would Google, wait, what time is it right now supposed to be in Europe to make sure this is consistent with our story? So anyway, now I know the media is going to go crazy on this in terms of, oh, this shows the deep penetration of Russia into our discourse. I'm going to be a little skeptical of that. I mean, they were not being told what to say by Russia. They were, they have views on, you can disagree with them, but they have their views on Ukraine and on the broader global conflict that happen to align with what this funders wanted, and they deceived them about the source of the funding. So fraud to my mind, should absolutely be prosecuted, but the victims it's actually Tim Pool, like he says in the statement.
I think there's a lot to unpack here. In their memo, they did push different messaging. If anybody's ever watched Tim Pool, unfortunately, you'll know that he's not a foreign policy expert, but suddenly he seemed to understand intricacies of the Russia-Ukrainian war and was very critical of Ukraine and Vladimir Zelensky. And
I've been critical of. I'm not an expert in foreign policy either, but I'm critical about whether Russia invaded and it is bad, and Putin is an authoritarian, and they should not have done that. I also want to reach a peace deal so that the war ends, and that's going to involve, frustration on both sides. I don't think that makes me pro-Putin.
Right, but the memo that was released in the indictment did show that there was messaging guidelines for these influencers. But this also reveals a weakness in our media system. If we thought that mainstream media was bad and had influential tactics behind the scenes, this is much worse because, some people see these folks as journalists. Some people see these folks as media figures. Some people think maybe there are teams gathering research. Whether or not you agree with it or not, there's some sort of informed decision-making behind the scenes. But they're paid influencers. And whether or not it was from Russia or not, I think that we have a weakness in our system that you can pay an influencer and frankly boost in some situations, and I'm sure that this is going to be unraveled more with the indictment, is that through the bot operations, you can boost somebody's arguments so that it goes higher up in the algorithm and more people see it and more people repeat it. The entire social media infrastructure is very manufactured. It's based on social design. And if you have money and if you have the resources and the intelligence to boost certain narratives, you can do so, whether you're a foreign government or not.
But how is that? I guess that just doesn't seem different from what the traditional media. Traditional media has fun. We have, Qatar has financed media organization. China, a Chinese spy was on the payroll of the governor of New York. China owns the NBA. The players are afraid to criticize them. There's so much foreign influence going on. Like, we got to be. I think we should be not dramatic about it. It's $10 million in terms of the amount of money spent on elections by the candidates themselves is nothing. And I am seeing now, as conservatives are processing this, I'm seeing some people on the right, like David Sachs, wondering, these accounts were actually going after Trump for betraying the pro-life cause. Mm-hmm. And they want, they're not accepting it at face value that the goal of this was to boost Trump. And right. Because actually a lot of the commentary has been very hostile to Trump in a way that might actually hurt him with general election audiences. So I think there's still a lot more to explore here. I'm sure we're going to be talking about it in the days to come. We'll have more Rising right after this.